Hey everyone, welcome to This Explainer. I am so incredibly pumped you're joining me today because we're diving into a massive 7 million year journey through time. We're going to explore the absolutely fascinating and honestly kind of contradictory evolution of the human body and our incredibly complex brain. We'll trace the footsteps of our ancient ancestors and uncover how a simple shift in how we walk set the stage for a biological collision that still impacts every single one of us today.
Okay, let's dive right into this. It's a super relatable, universal, and very modern question. Why is human childbirth so tough? If you look at the animal kingdom, especially our closest primate relatives, giving birth is a relatively straightforward process. But for us, humans, a fetus has to navigate this tight, spiraling birth canal, tilting and turning its head through multiple stages. It comes with incredibly high risks and a level of pain that is entirely unique to our species. Scientists have studied this for years, and as you'll see in this explainer, the answer to this painful mystery actually lies in an ancient evolutionary tug-of-war.
To figure this out, we're going to hit 5 key areas: the myth of linear evolution, Toomai's first steps, Lucy and the bipedal shift, the bipedal brain dilemma, and finally, the brain's big bang. Let's get into it.
All right, part 1, the myth of linear evolution.
So, the crucial point here is that evolution is absolutely not a straight line. You know that famous cartoon, right? The one with the hunched-over ape slowly standing up straighter and straighter until it's a modern guy holding a briefcase? Well, according to our sources, that is arguably the most misleading illustration in the history of science. Evolution isn't some neat, inevitable march of progress. It's actually a messy, branching bush of different hominins. We literally had multiple human species living at the exact same time. For example, our species, Homo sapiens, shared the Earth and even swapped some genes with Neanderthals. It was a world of random mutations, definitely not a predetermined path.
Let's move to the timeline and see how this actually builds. We're going to anchor our journey on 3 huge milestones. 7 million years ago, we see our earliest distinct divergence with Toomai. Fast forward to about 3.5 million years ago, we meet Lucy, where upright walking becomes standard. And then, roughly 2.5 million years ago, the genus Homo arrives, completely changing the biological game. Which brings us to part 2, Toomai and the first steps.
So let's travel way back to the very beginning of this timeline to meet our first evolutionary avatar. This represents the earliest known divergence of our ancestors from other primates. Meet Toomai, or scientifically, Sahelanthropus chidensis. Picture this, 7 million years ago. That is a staggering 230,000 generations before you. Toomai lived in what's now the desert in Chad, but back then, it was a lush, incredibly dangerous forest. And their brain was tiny. Only about 350 cubic centimeters. That's roughly the size of a child's palm, or a modern chimpanzee's brain. Toomai's world was absolutely terrifying. Saber-toothed cats roamed the land, crocodiles filled the water. Sitting right in the middle of the food chain, Toomai basically survived by scavenging the leftovers of bigger predators. While they had distinct features like a prominent brow ridge, they looked way more like apes than humans, and scientists are actually still piecing together if they even walked upright full-time.
Moving on to section 3, Lucy and the bipedal shift. Jumping forward about 3.5 million years, the actual mechanics of our bodies start to drastically change. Meet Lucy. She's a member of Australopithecus afarensis, discovered over in the Afar Triangle of Ethiopia. By her time, the climate had totally shifted. Those lush forests were drying up, thinning out into wide-open African savannas. So out in the open grass, facing predators like lions and hyenas, Lucy's species had to adapt to survive. And they did this by making a mechanical shift to bipedalism, walking upright. Her pelvis and leg bones were structurally reshaped for standing on 2 feet, so she could see over the tall grasses. Though her long, powerful arms show she was still climbing trees to escape danger when she needed to. But check out her brain size. At 375 to 550 cubic centimeters, it hasn't really grown much since Toomai. Our legs evolved long before our brains did.
And that sets up section 4, the bipedal brain dilemma.
Now, what's really interesting about this is the massive physical paradox it created. To walk upright efficiently on 2 legs, you need a narrow pelvis. That adaptation started millions of years ago, turning the hominin pelvis into a pretty rigid birth canal. But wait, fast forward to about 2 million years ago, and our brains suddenly start getting massive. And birthing a large-brained infant? Well, that requires a wide pelvis. You simply can't have both. You can't have an optimally narrow pelvis for walking and an optimally wide one for birthing giant heads. In evolutionary biology, this clash is famously known as the obstetrical dilemma. So, how exactly did nature solve this brutal clash between our legs and our heads? The evolutionary workaround was a compromise called secondary ultracellularity. Basically, human babies are evicted from the womb before they're fully cooked. To make sure the baby's head can actually fit through that narrow bipedal pelvis, human infants are born with relatively small brains, completely helpless, and neurologically immature compared to other primates. This directly answers our big hook from the beginning. It is the exact reason why a baby giraffe can walk within hours, while human babies need years and years of intense dependent care.
All right, Section 5, the brain's Big Bang.
So, what drove that sudden need for a larger birth canal in the first place? Well, the data brilliantly illustrates a sudden spike in cranial capacity. As our final major biological revolution kicks off around 2.5 million years ago with the genus Homo, we see what scientists call the Big Bang of the brain. Think about it. For millions of years, from Toomai to Lucy, brain size just hovered in that 350 to 550 cubic centimeter range. Then suddenly, evolutionarily speaking, brains jumped to 900, then 1,000 cubic centimeters. By about 500,000 years ago, our cranial capacity absolutely exploded to a staggering 1,500 cubic centimeters. That's roughly the size of a melon. Our neocortex expanded to take up 80% of our brain mass, completely unlocking language, creativity, memory, and self-awareness.
Now, you might be wondering what actually triggered this massive explosion. The secret is hidden right in our genetics. Back in 2015, geneticists pinpointed a highly complex gene known as ARGAP11B. This gene is entirely unique to humans. It is completely absent in chimpanzees. The evidence suggests that right after we split from chimps, a partial duplication of an existing gene happened. Get this. When researchers introduced this specific gene into developing mice, the mice's neocortex grew 12% larger and even started showing the folding patterns of a human brain. This was the genetic trigger that let us bypass normal primate limits.
But, of course, this extreme intelligence came with a massive biological cost, way beyond just a painful birth. Evolution literally wiped away primate survival traits like thick fur and powerful bite forces just to prioritize this new supercomputer. Today, the human brain accounts for only about 2% of our total body weight, yet it completely hogs 20% of our body's total energy. When you look at our body mass, we possess the largest brain of any living creature on Earth, literally 3 times larger than what you'd expect for a primate of our size.
And how do we actually know all this?
It's all thanks to some incredibly rigorous academic science. We're talking ancient DNA sequencing, analyzing mitochondrial genomes from 35,000-year-old fossils, and studying 3.3 million-year-old stone tools found in Kenya. Paleoanthropologists have painstakingly pieced together this giant puzzle over decades. It's this brilliant synthesis of fossils, genetic markers, and climatic records that lets us reconstruct this epic 7-million-year story. Which leaves us with a pretty profound final thought. Our ancestors traded the safety of the trees to walk upright. That single shift triggered a crazy cascade of events that gave us the most powerful brains on the planet, but at the immense cost of difficult, painful births and years of vulnerable infancy. When you weigh the sheer scale of those evolutionary trade-offs, you really have to ask yourself, was the extreme biological cost truly worth the price of human intelligence? Thank you so much for exploring this fascinating journey with me, and I hope this explainer leaves you just as curious about our wild human origins as I am.